Hello and welcome to the first episode of BlazQ. I'm deeply sorry for the inconvenience caused by a kind of messy network driver who limited my upload speed to less than 1 megabit, meaning I had trouble. Yeah, I had trouble with connection. I'm deeply sorry. I found the issue and I think it won't happen again. So, okay, again, thank you very, very much for joining, for listening, and for taking your time. So let's start with BlazQ. I mean, the first episode is a little bit slidish, so we have a lot of slides to go through, but I tried to make it as much enjoyable as possible. And again, first episode is usually a lot about introduction, but introductions are important. So what we're going to do today is we go through the introduction, we will see a preparation, and we go through preparation of our dev environment to let things started. We Our goal is to move Blazorly. You can see him on the right corner around the screen. So we do a little bit of animation stuff, and in the end we have a little bit of debrief. But I think it's best actually showing what we want to do. So give me 1 second, and I will um, show you what we're gonna do at the end of the episode. 1 second. I just need to add another window. Okay, what we want to do is today moving BlazQ around the screen. So let's show what we have so far. So we can move him around, and we can move him around um, based on things we can choose any other options. So we can delete it, and we say we're starting in the upper right corner. We're moving around a bit, going to the other corner. Yeah, and yong. So this is what we want to do today. Not, yeah. Okay, so let's get started. Back to our presentation. As I said, a little bit of introduction, but I think it's okay. So let's answer some important questions. So what is BlazQ and how does it help us or you to learn software development? Before we starting, I think it's a fair amount to just present myself. My name is actually Benjamin. I'm 30 years old. I studied electric engineering in Germany, and since then, or even in my during my study, I worked as a freelancer in very different domain, including software development. I have done a lot of teacher coaching recently. I was speaking at some conferences, and I'm also author of one book. Anyway, it's not about me. I think most importantly for you is to answer some questions. So a very important question is who will benefit from what we are doing here? So um, I can think there are two groups. One who thinking about or wanted to know if software engineering is their thing. So during BlazQ, it will help you greatly to evaluate if a career as a software engineer is something you enjoy. Um, because we explore the way of thinking like a software engineer or software developer. And so you can see if you can answer such question like, do you like to be challenged? Do you want to surpassing your limits and reach new heights of understanding and abilities each day? And on the other hand, it's like, I want to be a software developer. So you have already made the decision that you like what you do, but it's hard to get into. There are so many things to know and sometimes so hard to understand. So you're looking for something which is challenging, but still easy to understand and yeah, enjoyable, right? So Yeah, this is what BlazQ is made for, or who is BlazQ made for. Um, why I'm doing BlazQ? To be honest, I love to be a software developer. I think, it's the greatest thing in the world. Um, because it's like on a tiny scale, we are able to create our own worlds. And I don't mean in a sense of a game or anything, but really we can really create something which helps others. And I feel this feeling very mighty, to be honest. It's like it's a very good feeling. And I mean, think about, even if we just removing one small button or making one action more smoothly, we are, someone has benefit from our work. And I think after some years of experience, I want to give back something. So BlazQ is my contribution to everyone who wants to get into coding and to have a good path towards becoming a software developer. Um, BlazQ itself, name is from Blazor, which is a vector technology stack from .NET. And .NET itself is a huge library, mainly um, maintained by Microsoft, but we can build nearly every application within the .NET space, which is great. So that's why it's a Blaze. And the Q is because we're building a quiz. You can see like one of um, it's not entirely finished, but this is how BlazQ will look like. Um, we have a small quiz. We starting with playing locally on the same um, against ourselves just to get something started. We go then to couch co-op and later also to an online multiplayer version. The game itself, BlazQ, it's not intended to be in any way like a serious game. Um, we try to put fun and enjoyment into it. And the questions, which is kind of if you say, the essence of a quiz, we create ourselves. So you can create questions for nearly every occasion. And we also add some more um, unordinary things from quizzes, like jokers, into the game to spice it up a bit. And if you want to get a feeling what we're doing in the end, I really loved, as when I was young, I really loved to play the you don't know Jack games. Just a link. Just watch it. It's a very enjoyable game. Yeah. So what is BlazQ from the perspective of learning? Um, and it is a live coding event. So like now you can chat, you can ask questions, and I will answer them. So we have like an interactivity inside this realm. And I have planned so far 12 episodes, um, which is I think a fair amount. But again, it's not it's not in any way not changeable. So if we realize we need more episodes for some topics, we will go for it. And if we see that we can make more progress, we can also shorten it. So, but the entire thing, it's about really understanding basic concepts. Even if we're doing, well, let's say some advanced things like um, a real-time communication, it's still about understanding basic concepts. And I try that we kind of working slowly but steady towards this goal of creating these eureka moments where you really understand how things are working. So what technique will we use? It's mainly focused on web development. So we have some classical things like HTML and CSS. No, and no JavaScript. We're doing with C Sharp, which is a kind of object-oriented language. We will see what it means later episodes. We have client-server model. We have REST APIs. We will talk about how we can save our data in a persistent way, so like databases, storage, and we will also talk about bidirectional communication. Yeah, so another thing which is very important, it's like BlazQ is intended to be a learning project. And to learn, we need to make mistakes. And I think it's very important to create a space where everyone is able, not only able, but kind of encouraged to make mistakes, to recover, and to learn from them. And to create such a space, I came up with some values, and I would like that everyone who participate in BlazQ commit to these values and again to create this space. So first, there are no dumb questions. I think sometimes if we have, think about a question is something very important because it kind of hinder your ability to make progress in your learning. And if you fear to ask a question because you fear judgment from others or from me, for example, um, you can't progress. So again, having a question, it's very important. It's very important to be not afraid to ask. I mean, I remember back at school where I was sometimes afraid to ask a question, but it was never helpful. So now if I can kind of helping to create such a learning environment, I really want to encourage you to ask any question you have in mind. Next thing, which is also very important, no one, and this includes me, is free of any error. So I mean, I started with a kind of bandwidth issue and lost some viewers. So again, learning is about making mistakes and no one is perfect. And so if you spot a mistake, if you spot an error in anything I'm doing or in anything others are doing, really feel free to reach out and say, well, I think I think I can help you to improve, right? The third value is like this entire project is about learning. It's not production ready. It's not, and it doesn't have the best practice you can think about. It's it is intended to maximize the learning effect. So like having the most impact with the um, least amount of time. So sometimes we will do things not entirely as would do them in a real application, but again, it's intentionally. And the last thing, and this is a word but has a lot of meaning, is respect. We need to respect each other to create a safe learning environment. And with respect, starting with avoiding of some words like obvious or evident, because what is maybe obvious for you is obvious because you have a certain knowledge already. And this doesn't imply that another has the same knowledge. So if you engage in discussion, if you're answering questions, try to kind of step only half step um, in front of whoever asks a question and try to emphasize to emphasize with their needs. So really try to respect the other and try to respect that everyone is on a different learning curve and everyone is individually. So what things that might be easy for you hasn't to be necessarily easy for another. Yeah, I will talk about these learning values every episode, not so lengthy, but just as a reminder, because again, these values will help us to creating an environment where everyone is wants to wants to participate. Okay. Um, Now let's talk about the learning mode. So how you can learn with BlazQ. During this live session, I strongly recommend that you're focusing on understanding. Um, because later you can practice by yourself at any time which is convenient for you. But now we have the ability to interact directly, to interact with others, and to asking questions. I remember when I was studying, I remember very good my lecture in engineering math. It was like 90 minutes, constantly a stream of information. And most of my fellow students spent a lot of time trying to copy everything the professor has written on the board. And instead, I was sitting there, actively listening and engaged and asking questions and building my understanding because everything he has told us was available in tons of other books. But this experience of having an interaction, the ability to ask a question, was only possible in the lecture. So again, I strongly recommend focusing on understanding, on listening, and to understand the moving parts and practice by yourself later. Okay, so every material can be found on GitHub. So you can see every source code, every illustration, you can see the slides and anything else you have there. There's an URL, and now I will like also show you um, how how it's working. So we show mhm, there we are. Okay, so we can see this is GitHub, the web interface of GitHub. Um, And basically, you can think about JIT is like a OneDrive or a Google Drive specialized in hosting source code and other materials. We will use it to, yeah. So for example, we have now episode one. We have a media folder, and then you can see there's slides available also as PowerPoint if you like, or as classical PDF document. You can see we have all the source code available. We can look at the file. So everything what we need will be on this environment here. And another thing which is great, um, I show you later, is slides back. So questions is also one thing. So I believe you will have questions when you're looking through this material and when you try to study it. Starting with the next episode, there will be a dedicated block, time block, where you can ask questions. Or where dedicated you can ask questions. Besides, you can start discussions on GitHub like ahead of time. So we're going back to GitHub where we can have discussions. You don't have to need an account only to start a discussion, so you can get all the material for free. But to engage in discussion, you need to have an account. So discussions are pretty easy. You can start a discussion, you can ask a question. I don't understand the concept of you can answer something, you can I wanted to know why. So you can start a discussion. Oh, sorry, I forgot to select a category. As I said, everyone makes mistakes, and even if I prepared it a couple of times. So, and everyone who has a GitHub account can participate in this discussion. And I try again. Also, it's always a question about balancing uh, work, hobby, and kids. Try to answer them as quick as possible, so you got feedback soon. Okay, we're going back to the slides. Okay, as I said today, just as a reminder, what we want to do today from a kind of perspective from BlazQ. We want to set up our environment to actually develop something, and we want to, in the end, we want to develop that Blazorly can move around the screen. And I just want to show it again now to talk a little bit more about it, that we have a clear understanding of um, what's going on. So we see here we have BlazQ. Blazorly, which is the moderator of the quiz. It's an image, and in the end, we can create a kind of a path. So we want to start at the center, and we want to move to any position and another position back. So we can create kind of anything we want to see. And these values here are technically nothing else than coordinates. And we see like we will see we have 100 means the entire screen or end of the screen. And yeah, so again, this is our episode goal. So we'll start to moving Blazorly around. Yeah, okay, back to the slides. And sorry, back to slides. Slides. I want to see slides. I don't want to see this anymore. Slides. Okay, sorry, slides again. Yeah, but before, and this is only starting this episode, we need to prepare our dev environment, and it's pretty easy. All we need to do is three things. We need the .NET 5 SDK, which is like all these small helpers getting our source code to a running application. We will need Git as a client to get files from, for example, GitHub, and we will also need Visual Studio Code, which is our editor. And the good thing is all of these three tools runs um, on the three major operating system: Windows, Mac, and Linux. Yeah, because I'm a Microsoftie and I don't know anything about Mac OS or Linux. I will show it only for Windows. Again, it's pretty easy. Um, it's pretty easy, and there's in the inside the repo. In the episode 1, you will find files where you can how you could do it with Linux, Mac, and there's also um, step-by-step introduction how to do it with Windows. So um, let's just show it how we can install it and how easy it is. So not important anymore. Windows capture not. Um, so what I've done here, it's like a virtual machine. So it's like a freshly Windows installed. And yeah, we can start downloading things. We start with download.NET 5 SDK. Again, all the links are inside the documentation, so you don't need to really, yeah, really remember something. I just make it a little bit, zoom a little bit in. So I think for most folks, it's will have 64-bit operating system. So we download it. Should be pretty fast. It's not so big. After finishing, open another tab. Um, it will welcome us with a little dialog. User access control kicks in and wants to see if we are really sure about what we are doing. It installing all the needed tools. As you can see, a lot of interesting things. Um, when it's finished, it is just. I mean, we will. Yeah, it will be there, so we can close it. You can open the comment prompt if you like, and then you will see you can type .NET minus minus version, and everything is fine on just .NET to see something has been installed. So 1 out of 3. Next thing will be JIT. So you can download JIT. Again, installing is not really interesting. I just wanted to, um, yeah, it's not really interesting to. And again, there's an explanation there. I just wanted to show you it's a very easy and convenient way and can be done in minutes. I mean, the entire environment. So Git come or the Git install wizards come with a lot of questions, and they are all important. But from a point of a beginner, we just can click us through, and there's only one tiny thing we don't necessarily need to change, but which I recommend to change just because of kind of. So as I said, pretty straightforward. We can just click through. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Again, 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 again. So everything is fine. Would be working good. The only thing I recommend to change is this. Usually Git like the first branch, so you're developing a branch, is called master or was called master a long time and during um, kind of awareness campaign, and everything about main is a better name for it. So that's the only thing I recommend to change during the Git installation. Anyway, finish, 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 everything is fine and doing your work. So while it's installing in background, I go ahead and download download, oops, should be writing correctly, download VS Code. It's working perfectly. And we go into the site. There are many different versions. I assume system installer. You can also like having it on a stick version and 64-bit. Waiting some time. Installer is downloading. I don't want to see release notes of Git, so I just finished. And to make the same kind of test, now we can have Git minus minus version. Oops, Git doesn't recognize, makes sense because I need to restart a console application. So we have Git minus minus version, ta-da, or just Git to see um, things. So, okay, 2 out of 3. Now we go into VS Code, which is again also pretty simple and not much to talk through. Okay, I accept the agreement. I'm happy with path. Now it's the like select additional tasks. I recommend to choose this 2 option just because of convenient reason. Um, then we have like a context in the context menu to open with code, which is again just to make things easier. So um, after also this installer has completed, we can finally launch it. And there's only one tiny thing to do because VS Code is well, let's say like a shell where you can put a lot of things into it. It's not direct support for .NET Core. So all we need to do is like installing one application, which is called C#. So again, open the um, extension panel, typing in C#, you will find the first application and things are good to go. So I will close for now, like I see both comment windows. And just to make a final check, I can run .NET, yay, I can run Git, and I can run code, which will open a new window. So that's all. So now we have set up our development machine for the entire range of this course, and it was pretty easy. And again, for Mac and Linux, it is not much more complicated than this. So, oh, sorry, I haven't seen the question. Why using instead VS Code for Visual Studio for C#? It's a really good question. So long time, long time ago, Microsoft launched Visual Studio for um, like the basic platform, the basic productivity tool for developing, and it's a great tool. Since Microsoft changed its minds and was a lot going more to open source, they developed VS Code as a fully open source editor. Um, I choose VS Code for this course to that everyone can use it without having any barrier, any entrance barrier. So Visual Studio is only working on Windows. There's a Mac version, which is I think now like nearly having the same features. And when you're starting Visual Studio, it's a great tool, but I think for beginners it is also kind of overwhelming. Um, Yeah, so there are a lot of things you can do. So to sum up, VS Code is an open source editor. It's free to use. It has a great ecosystem of plugins, and yeah, and everyone can use it on every platform. Um, but nevertheless, I always prepare Visual Studio solution files, so you could do everything what you like to do also with Visual Studio. Um, does it answer your question? Okay. Um, okay. So yeah, just going back to the slides for just a bit. It's not much. We will starting soon. So as I said, important also for each platform, we need the C# plugin. Um, so what doing we next? So I've shown you in the GitHub repo, or I've already shown you the GitHub repo, and we can just clone. So in Git it's called clone, which is basically a copy operation, a little bit more advanced, but it's a copy operation. So what we're doing, we go back to the virtual machine. We are going back to the virtual machine. We can go to github.com/benno slash BlazQ. So we can say here is a thing, so we can click here, we can copy it. I, because it's virtual machine, I don't have anything. I just say new folder, let's call it coding. I open PowerShell or command, doesn't matter. And what I'm doing, I will just type git clone. I have to spell clone correctly. And what happened? It will go to the repository, grab all files, and here we are. And just as a proof, it's the same files we have in here as we have here. Okay, in episode 1, we have two kind of solution files, which this is just when we finished, and this is what we are restarting. So we're heading here. And because we have this great option, we can open it with VS Code here. So if you're starting this project for the first time, you can see something happened here. Yeah, like some packages are downloading, some things getting to restored. Razor language service will be started. Finished. Perfect. So as soon as this service is finished, we will ask to restore dependencies. You can then store dependencies. Now we see some things kick in. Okay, and what we see in here, the pane, is the so-called debugger. I've already created a lot of things, so all we need to do, we need still to wait to restoring for packages. So it's already possible to run the application. Um, so projects restore and restored. Again, the first time it took a little bit longer because a lot of packages or dependencies need to be installed. So anyway, as soon as it's finished, we can click here. Of course, I want to allow VS Code to access my network because I know what I'm doing. So, and this is how we start for today's episode. We have BlazQ, and BlazQ is not BlazClore. We have Blazorly. Blazorly is right on the screen. If we're hitting start, nothing happened, and this is our task. Now it's about if we're hitting start, something should, or someone with magic should write code that Blazorly is moving around the screen. Okay, so I'm just going back to the slides for a moment because of one image. Before we talking about, or before we actually try to code, let's think about the task itself. It's about moving an element around the screen. So the screen itself, we can think about we have like a coordinate system. We have yeah, we have an x and a y axis, and what happens is like in one tiny moment we have like one position, and in the next moment we have like a delta x or a delta y. So all we have to do is like based on a time frame, changing these values, x and y of the picture. Yeah, that's all what is need to do. So we're going back to the virtual machine and going back to VS Code. I zoom in, so it's easier to read. Okay, here in the files, there is like a page which is called index. You can see a lot of things which is for these like hello world thing not important. We will discuss it in much detail around this course, but for now, all we have to do is scrolling down to reach in the code section. And as we can see, here's a little comment, do the work here. So we can see we have already X and Y, as I mentioned in the picture before. So now it's all about changing it. And just as a proof of concept, when animate starts, I will just write different values to it. So we have X, let's say 10, and Y, let's say 90.5. And this is something I need to explain later. It's just, for now, it's just magic that things are working. I stop the debugger. I ignore it because I just ignored it. And we try it again. I zoom a little bit in. We going to start, and we see is so all we need to do is to manipulate these two so-called variables, and then Blazorly is moving around. Okay, so now we're taking really time. So all from now was a kind of preparation. I don't assume that you understand fully everything what has happened now. And again, this is not the intention. I just want to show with small changes how we can have a huge impact. So if it's a little bit too fast and you don't understand everything from now, it's okay. Because in the next episode, we will build everything from scratch. I will explain what all of these things means. Why, yeah, I will explain a lot. For now, we just try to focus on the task ahead to get things done. Okay, so what we can see here, it's like this one is called, simplified called a variable. So with a variable, variables are like memories. We can save something and we can manipulate them. So meaning overriding their values. Double is like a number which is also a fraction. So we can save, yeah, numbers with fractions or reals or again, many different words for the same thing. Okay, so we need to manipulate it. And because it's an animation, and already said animation, meaning we have to go time into it, we have also here something which is already there for us, duration. And the duration is an integer. So an integer is a number without fractions. If I would write, for example, something like this, as you can see, the compiler, which is a great helper for us to run our code, say I can't. I mean, it's a little bit cryptic here, but I can't double, which meaning a number with a fraction can't be an integer, which is fair enough, right? Okay, so now we have our duration. And if you think about animation, animation is usually a trick because our eye or our brain can't process many images per second. If we have enough images, we don't see the difference between two pictures. So we say like we're creating a new variable. And because this variable like frames per second, and I just said initialize with 30. So what happened here? I created a new variable. New because it has a type. It has a new because it has a type. in front. Then I can choose a name. Any name is possible. What I like to do is like when a new word starts, I'm using a capitalized letter. What is here is I initialize. I said this variable should have the value of 30. Again, you can add any different number, and if you want to try it out, you can reduce the number, and then you will see like the animation will stock picture by picture. Okay, so now we have frames per second. If we knowing the duration and we knowing the frames per second, we can calculate the total amount of frames, which is nothing different than frames per second multiplied with duration. Okay, so if we say we have 5 seconds and 30 frames per second, we have 150 steps. And let's say in the first try, we want to move Blazorly from the top left corner to the top right corner. So we're starting it and setting it to x0, y0, which is again the top left corner. And in using these numbers, 150 steps, it should be 100. So the delta, so the change in each steps is nothing less like um, we have our goal, 100, divided by total amount of frames. Okay, shouldn't, yeah. Okay, so thinking about we have 150 pictures, and we have a difference of 100 would be a little bit less than one entire picture. There's a tiny thing here now to know. 100, as we can see, is an integer. So the amount of frames is an integer. What happens here is a so-called integer division. And so we would divide 100 divided by 150. It's technically 0 because we only focus um, on the things which is in before the fraction. Again, integer we'll talk later. So just a little bit, just need to add 0 because now we have double divided by int is double. Okay, and for each, and this is very important also from a perspective of language, for each time frame, we need to change the x based on this value. And this is classical a loop. And a loop there are different loops. One loop starts with a for. For int 0, and for int step 0, as long as step is smaller, sorry, smaller than total amount of frames, we want to increase step by 1. Okay, this is kind amount of syntax. Try it again. For, we want to start with step 0. Makes sense because at the beginning we don't have any animation done. As long as our step is smaller than the total amount of frames, we want that step is incremented by 1. Because we're starting by 0 and we're going to less than total amount of frames, we have exactly the number of total amount of frames. So like um, different example, we want to count all numbers to 5. So we would count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have actually 6 numbers. But if we would count without the 5, we have 5 numbers. So in each step, we will say our new x should be the old x added by our delta. Okay, also a little bit weird here. Don't confuse it with a mathematical equation. It's not. It is um, just an assignment. So I read the x. So at the beginning 0, I add something, and this result is written back into the variable called x. Okay, so yeah, we are not entirely finished because what we have said so far is like total um, amount of frames. So what we're doing now is like I really like this concept of pen and paper debugger. So we're just using our mind to understand what happened here, to see um, effects in place. Okay, restarting. Step is 0. 0 is smaller than 150. Perfect. X is also 0. We add our delta, which is 1/3, 2/3. So new X is 2/3. We are now here. The loop starts. Before the loop starts, step is incremented. So step is now 1. 1 is smaller than, and everything goes around. What we missing here, it's like we don't wait. So this loop would be executed or would be run as fast as your machine could do. So what we need to think, we need to have a certain amount of break into it. So we need to like create an artificial delay. So let's think about how long this delay should be in a sense of milliseconds. Um, delay per frame. So if we would have like 1,000 frames per second, each frame would be visible for exactly 1 millisecond. If we have 100, it would be for 10. So if we have 50, it would be for 20. So it's always that we dividing frames per second through 1,000. Why 1,000? Because we want to have the amount in milliseconds. Make it a kind of, it's easier to handle, and I think it's easier to handle in our minds. So just again with pen and paper, I want to have 1,000 frames per second. 1,000 frames divided by 1,000 is 1, meaning a delay of 1 millisecond. Okay, now I want to have 100 frames. So I would divide 100 divided by 1,000, which is again not right. So I was wrong. Again, everyone makes mistakes. And this was, to be honest, not on purpose. It just happened. So the first thing is still true. So 1,000 through 1,000 frames, oops, per second. Um, so the first thing is still true. We divided 1,000 to 1,000 is 1. Now we divided it by 100, which means 10 milliseconds per frame. We divided it by 50. We made 20 milliseconds per second. Okay, so now it's the right thing. And as I said, everyone makes mistakes, including mine. And that's the good thing about a live event. It's you can see it happens to everyone. Okay, delay is also not very convenient at the beginning. That's why I'm just typing it. So yeah, we can. There's something again. Don't wait. We talk about all these later. There's something able that we can delay for a period of time, millisecond. And all what to do now is like informing our UI that something has changed, and please UI re-render. Re-render what you have done so far. Okay, so I stop the debugger. I ignore what happened here. I will just run it again. Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. It happened to me sometimes, and I still don't know why. What helps so far is closing VS Code and opening it again. I don't have a good reason for, and I really need to investigate it because it's kind of annoying. Anyway, as you can see, closing VS Code, restarting helps. So now we click into start, and what we see a smooth animation of um, BlazQ. I can decrease the amount of time, then it's faster. Makes sense because I need to because we still have the same delta and we need to do it in the same amount of steps, least amount of steps. So we need to increase the yeah, the delta per step. Okay. So what we have seen so far with just a few lines, and it's really not much. I mean, we forget about all these are kind of framework specific, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, let's say 12, with 12 lines, we were able to create a functionality that wasn't there before. And yeah, I think again, this is the great feeling about being a developer. We can just create something. And the only limitation we have is our is kind of our creativity, our knowledge, or in general our mind. And I think this is um, very unique to in comparison to other professions. Okay, so I think it was great, but well, we have other things. So what if I want to have the um, I want to go in the other direction? So what we have done so far, it's Blazorly can move from left to right. Now, how do we need to change it to do the other way around? So from right left corner to um, right left corner to the sorry, upper right corner to the upper left corner. Yeah, really right left. Sometimes it's confusing. So okay, um, yeah, we go in this direction, we go in this direction. So think about it. We still have the total amount of frames. It's an interesting question. We can multiply it by two to say we have like this is our first animation this way and this is the second animation, or we can just leave it there. We still have the same delay per frame, and also our delta is still the same. The only thing which changes is instead of adding, we need to subtract something. So I do the very bad thing of copy and pasting. I just copy the loop. It's still the same amount of things, and all I have to do is putting a minus in. So let's see if we accomplish what we hoped for, or what we have hoped for. Ah, again, it's really annoying. Closing, open it again, running debugger again. Um, yeah. Okay, restarting and moving around. So what we have now, or you could see like 5 seconds, I mean, you have seen it, it's true. Um, we need 1 second for this direction and 1 second for the other direction. If we want to be, um, if we want to be more precise, all we need to do is to make a tiny change. So because we have now 2 frames, we need to uh, uh, delta. So um, sorry, we need to total amount of frames. It's now only half of it, and our delta need to be in, and that's why we change total amount of frames. Half it mean our delta will um, double. So we stop debugger, launching it again. Same error, really. I really need to investigate. It's really annoying. Okay, and much faster. Jong. Again, tiny change and new function and new yeah, new functionality. And that's again what I really enjoy about being a software developer. I think even this is the greatest thing at all. Um, yeah, sometimes you may have, I mean, of course, you have recognized I'm not a native speaker. Sometimes I still needed to think about good words. That's why I'm having kind of lagging. It's, yeah, I try to improve myself. I try to improve myself the whole time. Okay, that wasn't such complicated. And, um, but well, let's see if there's something else here. So I start an animation and I just hitting the button again. Ooh, oh, now it's getting interesting. Very interesting behavior, right? So, ah, ooh, can even move on. It's coming back. Yong. I mean, it's kind of funny, isn't it? Anyway, so we see here from now we have like developers having a good fated or good-hearted user in mind, someone who want to wait for an animation until it's over to starting a new one. But we really haven't found a way to block it from happening. Okay, so now our task is we need to find a way to prevent a second animation to start if another animation is already in progress. And yeah, so what we need to do is we need to know if an animation is currently running or not. And if we say we need to know, it's usually a clear indication that we need a new variable because we need to save, we need to remember something. And what we need to remember is just like started yes or started no. And for this type of variable, or for this need, there's a special type of variable which is called Boolean. So I introduce a new Boolean like animation, animation in progress. Okay, so animation in progress starting. And now what we need to do is like we need a different behavior based on a value in a variable. So what we're doing here was like a reputation of something. What we do now is like really we need to change something based on a yeah on a as I said before on a value of a variable, and this is called a condition. So we have a certain condition. Let's say if animation in progress equals true, then return. So don't do anything of this stuff what is down here. Just return to whoever has called you. Just return. Okay. So there are some things worth to mention here. Let's first start. If is again is a so-called condition. Condition give us the ability to go a different path, to go a different flow based on anything we can check. So what these again, it's very important, is with one um, with one equal sign, like we have here, or we have here. This is called an assignment. I assign a value. With two, I check. I check if the values are equal. So it's an equality check. And this is something most people struggle at the beginning because it's like, yeah, why two equal signs? Again, it's a check of equality. And just to mention, this would be not equal. Equal, sorry, equal, not equal. Okay. And the same again, going back, not an equation, just an assignment. Okay, so condition. If animation in progress is true, we want to return. So let's say for the start, it should be false. So if our program starts, we assume no animation is running. And If an animation is running, we want to return. All we need to do now is like, again, pen and paper debugger. So we're going through our code. Our program starts, animation progress is false. Someone clicking the button, animate is executed. This one is false, so false not equal true. So these in the brackets won't be executed, so the animation runs. And I hit the button a second time. Animation in progress is still not true, so this thing will never be true. So what we need to do is like, we need to change it to true. Yeah, yep. Um, we need to change it to true. So now, if an animation starts, think these variables like it's like a flag. Either it is visible or it's not. And if it's visible, we don't have to raise it again. So yeah, you don't have to raise it again. Um, Again, going back to pen and paper, someone clicks the button. Animation in progress is still false. Animation in progress is true. Um, I click the button again. Animation in progress is true. I can't run the animation again. But if animate is finished, like we are here now, this value is still true. So I can't start. So what I've done now, I prevent any animation from happening again. So what we need to do, again, I will do the bad copy and paste thing. I just switch to false back. So we're starting, raising the flag. Now an animation is in progress. As soon as we have finished our work, we lower the flag. So someone else can do the same thing. And so stopping, I really hope it won't be happening again. Yay! No. Oh, it's annoying. I really have to find out why. And I know I said it a couple of times, but again, it's really annoying. And yeah, but it's all part of the improvement. It's the first episode, so yeah. Okay, we pushing start. It's working fine. I try to click as much as possible. Maybe you see it, and not happening again. However, as soon as I stopped, I can start again. And again, with so how many changes um, was needed to have this new functionality? Not much. I introduced a new variable and I introduced a condition, of course, and I set the variable. But again, now we have seen conditions and we have seen loops. And as a spoiler, each program is only made of conditions, or deep down, only made of conditions, loops, and variables. I mean, there are much more concepts to know, but all breaks down to these three elements: condition, loops, and variables. And yeah, okay. So what we have achieved so far, I think it's worth mentioning. So we have done our first programming. We was able to move the picture or Blazorly, if you want to personify it, from left to right and right to left. We have done it by technically changing coordinates and then refreshing the UI. I mean, we have done it by setting new coordinates, waiting a time slot, and refreshing the UI. It was happened here. So what we want to do now, it's like um, I want to move it from up to down. And as you may see, there's not quite a difference. All what I need to change would be x to y and um no x to y. Just need to change. I bet it won't work. I bet it works this time. I bet it works. And oh, wrong again. It's amazing. Okay, if it happens another time, I will go definitely back to watch command. So, oops, oops. Browser, about browser. Um, okay, not as impressive because it's a tiny change. What I haven't showed so far, and to be honest, I kind of forgot it. I want to do it earlier. Is I've mentioned always this type of debugger, as I said, pen and paper debugger. What I entirely forgot to mention, and entirely forgot to mention is um, we have integrated a debugger. So, well, all we need to do is like we need to click right in any line of code. Then we launch our application again. Hopefully it's working. It's not working. Um, it seems somehow he doesn't really cancel the process. Anyway, closing, opening it again, open it again. Um, there's something wrong with the launch file. Again, I will figure it out after the episode. Okay, so just hitting any line you would like to, and then we can start our program again. And I'm really sorry for forgetting to mention debugger earlier. Um, okay, and I click the button. What we see now, VS Code becomes active, and now we can see everything. We are able to see what happened in a program step by step. There are two keys I can step over and I can step into, which is on Windows function key 10 and 11. Again, I don't know on the other platforms, but always looking in the tooltips. So I go now step by step. We can see animation was false, so perfect. Animation is false. And after after executing this line, animation in progress is true. So we have X, we have Y, both are 0. And again, debugger is a very, very mighty feature. We can see everything. Okay, now also, again, I'm deeply sorry for yeah, for forgetting it. Okay, now let's look at the for loop. In this line, step is 0. 0 is smaller than total amount of frames, and we're going into the loop. Delta has been calculated as 4/3. Um, so we wait a second. Again, 35 millisecond, we haven't really noticed it. And remember to still see step is still 0. Only next step. Now we can see step is 0, execution next. Now step is 1. Hmm. Okay, not sure why. That's an interesting thing. Actually, it's not 0 anymore. Hmm. Okay, very curious. Okay, I can't really show it because it's not working in the debugger. It's very interesting. Anyway, in the loop you could, yeah. Anyway, this is a very interesting thing. I really need to see why. So in debugger, we can also create another breakpoint and just moving to the next step or moving it again. Um, that's interesting. Yeah, so what is a good thing for not only learner, believe me, for any developer is to be able to see what's really going on. And that is what a debugger helps us with. Debugger creates or attaches to a program and can execute it line by line. And it's a great, I mean, it's an awesome tool to help us create error-free programs or less error-prone programs. Okay, yeah, I just want to show there's also a debugger. Again, just pointing out to a line, and then it will be it executes. It's very interesting why it's 0. Okay, Okay, so again, what we have done so far, we have moved from left to right, right to left, up, down, up, and we prevented from an animation happening twice. And we also have seen what a debugger is. Um, what we should have recognized is that we copied a lot, and to change from left to right to up down, we yeah kind of changed um, only x to y. So I would I would say this is kind of things we should we not worry about, but something that's like feels a little bit strange. Why? Because it seems like there's an underlying system. So what if we don't want to move left to right? What if we want to do it any way, in any possible direction? So we need to think about a better system. And that's our next task. As you also seen in the demo, it was not like just moving up, down. There was more possibilities to show. So I going back to the slides. Okay, so the question is, how can we generalize it? How can we find a better system to express this animation movement? And one way is we will introduce a path. So now Blazorly can move along a path. A path has multiple elements or segments. Maybe let's call them segments. So a path contains of segments, and each segment has 2 points: the start point of the segment and an end point of the segment. And yeah, and what we need to do is we need to move along these segments. So what we have to calculate is like we need a delta x and a delta y, and based on these we can calculate, or we can just move. Yeah, we just can see the next point. Again, we assume all paths are just linear, so we don't have any curves in it, which makes it much more easier. And we going, yeah, and paths don't have to be closed. Okay, task. We need to think about how we can program it, how we can make it possible that Blazorly is moving along these path lines. Okay, so I've already created kind of boilerplate to get you started. If you're scrolling on top, you will see like these signs, which are like comments. So now it's recognized. So the entire thing of building the path is done. What we have is a variable called path. And in this variable, the whatever path we enter um, will be saved. And now it's up to us to find a way to, yeah, find a way to make it happen. I was starting from here because I have the strong assumption that we will need something, but not all of it. Okay, we if an animation starts, we set x and y to 0. It's still a good thing, and because we don't know what happened, yeah, and just update it. Okay, frames per second hasn't changed. Total amount of frames. Now it's very interesting. How many frames are needed? Still the same thing, like frames per second and duration. And also the delay per frame is the same thing, isn't it? If I want to have, if the animation should be 5 seconds, or what, yeah, it's still the same thing. Ooh, I forgot the end. Um, Okay, but now it's like delta. I mean, I could call it delta x, and I could copy it to delta y. But what is interesting here is like for each segment, again, for each segment, the delta x and delta y could be different. Or yeah, if it's different, if the path is different. So delta x and delta y is um, not constant anymore, or not constant in terms of one in the entire animation. And we can assume that we have to calculate it for each segment. So what we need to do, having a new loop, we having again, just as an editor is a very good thing. We just can type for, and then we have a, so we just call it path index. So as long path, sorry, segment, much better, segment index. As long as segment index is smaller than path point count, we want to increase our segment. So our segment, our path has just points in it. So we would need like simple path point would be like point 1 is, I will explain later, path. I just finish it and then I explain it. Okay, that's a very, it's the beginning of some very maybe confusing thing. Okay, path is just not one variable. I mean, it is one variable, but this variable has multiple elements in it. And if we want to access a single element, we we need to say we want to access on a certain index. And this list or this is starting with a 0. So this element would have index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. Because we started with 0, we need to, sorry, because we started with 0, we need to kind of go through the entire loop, the entire list, but one element less than the amount of count. Again, 5 elements. If we have, I just want to, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points in a list. So the last has index 4. So if count is 5, because we have 5 elements in it, the last possible thing would be 4 smaller 5, which is great. Index 5 is still valid. We would increase this value to 5. 5 is not smaller than 5. So end of loop. Great thing. Another thing is here to mention, we don't only using segment index, we're using segment index plus 1, meaning our last element, our last segment is actually this, meaning our last interesting index is not 4, it is 3. So we need to subtract by 1. Okay? Just subtract by 1 because we're going one element or one index ahead in each loop. And we will also see what happens if we forget it. Okay. So now it's interesting. For these, each segment, we need to find delta x and delta y. So let's starting with the difference of points. So 0.2 x minus point x makes sense. But if we think about lately, we have added just we have added just delta x. So what we have now here, it's like the delta x over the entire period, which we have done here as well. But not only about total amount of frames. It's not interesting because we have only a limited amount of time left in the segment. So we need to um, have not total amount of frames, but we would need a new like frames per segment. And frames per segment is total amount of frames divided by path from count. And so we can calculate delta x and delta y. Okay, it is, you can say what we have done before was like we have one segment from 0, 0 to 100, 0 when we're talking about left to right. So technically, frames per segment was also the same as total amount of frames. So is it still true in these? Is it still true here? So if I say we have total amount of frames and I have only 2 points in it, which is again the minimum of a segment, 2 points, we have only half of the points left. If I have 3 points, I have two segments, like first segment, second segment. So I would have to divide it by 3 because I have 3 points in it. But it's not true. I need to do, I need to subtract one thing. I need to subtract one. So think about total amount of frames. Let's say total amount of frames is 1000. And I have only 2 points in it. 2 minus 1 is 1. Total 1000 divided by 1, it's still 1000. Perfect. If I have now two segments, meaning 3 points, I would calculate 3 minus 1, which is 2. 1000 divided by 2 is 500. So meaning I had only half of the time or half of the frames per segment, which means I would need to increase the delta x. Okay, so now we can copy these, copy delta y, x, 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 and not to updating the UI. Okay, I think we are good to go. I will remove these. Okay, stopping. It won't work. It won't work. And now I've anticipated. So closing. I think for some reason the connection stays open and therefore it can't start a new process. Anyway, we want to see if we are done so far. Okay, restarting again. Now we'll see there's a button where we can edit the path menu. And if we have a quick look at it, it's like a triangle. We would move from, yeah, I think if you think about the points, you will see it's a triangle. Okay, so let's start and see what happened. Breakpoint. Okay. Oh, too fast. Restarting it again. Have you seen it? Just a small thing. So it seems that I'm not finished. Okay, I'm to admit I made these mistake on error, but um I make this mistake on error. I make these mistake on purpose. It was intentionally because to see that even a good first thought doesn't mean necessarily we are on the right track. Sorry, doesn't necessarily mean we're on the right track. So think about again. Now we could use our debugger, which comes very handy, and I put it right here and here, and starting animation again. Okay, we have 5 elements. So we have frames per second, still the same, total amount of frames, it's still the same, everything the same. Frames per segment. So we have total frames, 150 multiplied with 5, round, it's okay. 4, sorry, multiplied with 4, it's okay. It's rounding, happened to the best. Okay, we have point 1 and point 2. Let's have a look at these 2 points. Point 1, 0, 0, and 25, 100. So we have a delta x of 24. We have some values, we're adding these values, and then we just wait. Now we are waiting 35 seconds, so we should see a tiny movement. Sorry, data chain. We should see a tiny movement. Yeah, it's a bit. It's a bit. Um, but not much. We go into the next loop. We go into the next loop. A little bit of change. A little bit of change. Working smoothly. Okay. So we're waiting again. And what we see now, we have to think about, well, our intention was to follow a path, but we really, I mean, we've calculated delta x and delta y, but we haven't really followed the path, right? We just have add delta x and delta y. So what is missing? It's like the same loop we had before, the loop to actually follow a segment, follow a certain path. Yeah, so I just move the breakpoint, move on, that everything unfinished. I just stop it because I don't need it anymore. We have delta x, we have delta y, but what we need to build is another loop. And yeah, we need another loop like we have before. Step smaller than frames per segment. Step should be incremented by 1. Okay, that's it. Maybe. Ooh, unexpected. So let's see if we make progress. Still the same menu, and Blazorly is walking around. Okay, so let's explain it a little bit more because I think it's important to understand. Um, we can put everything, or we can nest everything in each other. We can have a loop run, a loop executing another loop, executing another loop. We can have a condition in a loop. We can have a loop in a condition. We can have a condition in a condition in a condition. So that's the kind of flexibility we have with program languages because, yeah, we are not constrained by only um, um, one control structure. We can nest them and we can nest them very deeply. Um, yeah, again, the first loop iterating through our segments in our path. And again, for each segment, so you can think about for each segment in the path, but also for each point or for each animation inside a path, we need to do these things, right? So we have 2 loops nested in each other. Yeah. So Are we free of any error? Have we done it? I just play around a bit. I just want to start, well, let's say I start with 100 to 100, um, 100, 0. Then I want to go directly to the um, other corner, which would be like x0 and 100 y. So start. Have you seen it? So what's wrong? And why it doesn't happen in the first place? So look at the first point. If we're starting with 0, 0, what we have done implicitly is here. So we're starting from a fixed point, and based on this fixed point, we move, which is correct if we're starting at this point. But if you're starting at a different point, like we have done here, I just reproduce it. Perfect. We can use this point to and hide and start. We see the direction kind of vector is right, but not the start point. It's a pretty easy fix. It's like path first element dot x and path first element, which meaning index 0 y. 2 times in a row. I don't think it will be 3 times in a row. Huh? Ah, amazing. Not amazing. So, and starting. So now we wanted to fix it. So oops, again 100 0 add and 100 add a little bit smaller. Hide start. Hmm. Hmm. So, hmm. Now it started where we found it should start it, but it's not working as expected. So we just look if we can reproduce it. Working fine. We have exactly what we wanted. So remove, 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 remove. And x0, epsilon 100, add, hide, start. Hmm. For some reasons, it's still not working. So let's see why. And we can do it by using our mighty tool, the debugger. We step right into it. Everything is. And we start. Okay, we starting with the first point, not really interesting. So we have point 2 makes sense. So delta makes also sense. Frames per segment makes sense because we have only 2. So we have 100 frames left. And x need to be less, makes sense. Makes sense. Oh, you can see that's a very good one. Frames per second. Yeah, amazing. So we have spotted the mistake. It shouldn't be frames per second. It should be frames per segment. It's maybe similar from names, but it's a different purpose. So I stopped the debugging. It was a really good mistake. It was a good one. Uh, yeah, I can laugh about my no mistakes because sometimes they are so funny. Um, when you're spending hours and then realize you just have misread true and false. It's amazing. Anyway, was a good one. Still, still amused by myself. Okay, but we want to have a kind of working or running application. So remove, add new one, add a new one, and hide and start. And hitting the debugger, removing the debugger because I'm now quite confident that it will work. Yeah, amazing. Okay, yeah, last thing. And last thing I want to mention in our introduction here, it's like, I mean, mention from a point of coding. The path system we have created here is very powerful because we can think about any way we have in mind. So let's start on the corners and we want to move it to the other corner. And we go to the other side. So one, we go into the, and we going on the other side, which would be 100, 100. We going back to 100x, and finally we going back to other side would be like 100. I hope I made the right other side, top, other side, diagonal, and diagonal. Yay! So we can now create any pattern with, I mean, maybe it's also very interesting. We can see, well, but we only can have linear things. Yeah, but we could approximate any circular thing with linear steps in it. So if you put tiny steps in it, I mean, I don't want to do it now because it's a tedious amount of work to do because we could program it. But anyway, now we have found a model, a very flexible model to do any animation, and we have all done it in our first lesson, and with technically very simple things. I know a lot of things here were prepared and the UI and that's already moving and I know and we will understand everything later. For now, it was really just about getting curious what we could do with coding and what we could do with what we could do with coding. And as I said multiple times, and I will say multiple times again, it's a great feeling and it's about being creative and creating something, which is, I mean, we can say it's helpful or not. It's a good question. At least was helpful for us, was helpful to learn and to understand. Okay, we are finishing the coding part. Um, we are finishing the coding part. It's great. Um, yeah, just debrief is just a kind of summary. So what we have done today is like we have setting up the environment, which was I think hopefully not a complicated task. We have animated the quizmaster Blazorly. We had a very brief introduction to variables, control structures, and I think from now it's important that I'm not important that we understand because understanding will become later, but really to get to use to the idea that everything, uh, everything around us, which is software, is basically made of variables, loops, um, loops and conditions, or in general, control structures. Everything. And we have also touched very briefly the concept of generalization. So sometimes it is easier instead of solving uh, one, two, three individual problems to think about what they have in common and what could be a common solution for this problem. So instead of having a kind of hard-coded animation from left to right, we discovered that we can use a path system to improve it. Um, So again, the episode was a very quick and very brief walkthrough. It was not entirely designed that you have a deep understanding of it. Again, it was about to having the feeling of accomplish something. That it's that the path we're walking on, the path to becoming a software developer is worth it, even when there's a lot of frustration on it. And it's really important for me that you have a good feeling for the next episode. We go now very briefly about the session plan because I think from now it's like a good point to mention that these type of work we have done, like I prepared something, I throw you in, and you just need to do something here in this tiny thing of source code. It's not my intention. Again, on the first episode. In the next, we will building the entire shell of BlazQ. So we are starting from the beginning. We will talk about a question. We will talk about what happened when we click a button, how we can change layout, everything. After that, we're going to make it pretty. We're going to coach co-op, which should be couch co-op. Amazing spelling mistake. Um, then we're going to implementing the jokers. So we're going more into like logic and how we can accomplish things and how we separate things in classes. After that, we are ready that we can publish our work, so everyone in the world can use our BlazQ quiz. After that, we're going to have a we going our first step into the multiplayer domain. We're going into we're creating a lobby. We will implementing the mechanics for multiplayer option. And we're going to implement a high score and also more things we can save like profiles. We will add privacy and authentication to a lobby that only certain or as only specific people can enter a personal lobby. And the last thing, it's like I want to is a kind of outro, and I want to talk about careers as a software developer. I want to bring some people on talking about their path, how they become a software dev, to get you an inspiration. Yeah. Next episode, as I mentioned, Shell of BlazQ. We talk about the quiz, the single player. We will create something which looks pretty basic, but okay, but not great. Next episode will be this at the same time, and same time, I think. Again, based on feedback, I will change it here. And yeah, so help me to improve to the learning experience. I think this is the biggest goal I have. I'm deeply sorry for the technical trouble at the beginning. I'm really deeply sorry for all this convenience. I've already learned a lot, but I can improve. Better preparation. Really was not entirely good prepared. Checking the connection before actually going live would also be a great thing. Um, yeah, maybe having kind of improved script so I can follow at least my own points or better my own points. But yeah, to coming back, I really appreciate your help. I think what we can do here can really help people becoming software developer, can really be helpful or be supportive in their way and to have less frustration that I had on my way and I think a lot of people had on their way. Um, I've created a quick form, as also mentioned in the GitHub repo, to get your feedback, and I promise that I value your feedback and we will have the impact. So if you say, for example, I have spoken too slow or too fast, I will change it. If you said my accent is so bad that you can't understand and follow, I will really try to improve it. So feel free or feel kind of encouraged to write anything you have on your mind into the episode, into the questionnaire, even if you don't like it, because otherwise I don't have the opportunity to learn. So thanks for listening. I really appreciate that I was not alone. It was my biggest fear was always producing something and nobody knows it. I mean, I could produce something and people know it's not good to something I could live with because then I can improve. But as I said, creating something and nobody's aware of it is my biggest fear for this project. If you enjoyed it, even with the quality and even with all the other things, I really would like to see more people on the stream. Um, yeah, and again, if you feel that was not a good thing, please tell me why and what I can change. Again, thank you so much, so much for listening. It was great to be not alone, and yeah, it was not the entirely coding live event I wish for because we don't have so much participants now. But I hope with a lot of other things, a rocky start could lead to, yeah, could lead to a good thing. Again, thank you very, very much. See you next Thursday. Oh, yeah, see you next Thursday, same time. Again, thank you. Thank you and goodbye.